March 16, 2023, 8:45 p.m., Cedar Park, Texas. The rain began as a soft patter against the window, barely audible over the hum of the television in the background. It was the kind of night that begged for quiet solitude. Tom had left earlier that afternoon for a 3-day work conference in Dallas. He'd kissed me goodbye at the door, promising to call when he arrived, and I'd waved him off with a smile. We were comfortable that way, reliable, predictable, or so I thought. Around 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. I hadn't been expecting anyone, and the sight of Mike on the front steps surprised me. His broad grin and easy demeanor were so familiar that I didn't think twice about letting him in. Mike had been Tom's best friend since college, a fixture in our lives, the kind of friend who showed up unannounced but was always welcome. "Just thought I'd swing by and make sure you weren't lonely," he said, holding up a 6-pack of craft beer as though it were a peace offering. I hesitated but forced a smile. "That's sweet, Mike. Come on in." We settled into the living room, the beer loosening the air between us as he recounted stories from work and his recent dating escapades. At first, it felt normal, the kind of friendly banter we'd always shared. But as the evening wore on, I noticed subtle shifts in his tone, his gaze lingering a beat too long, his laughter too sharp. By 9:30, the mood had changed entirely. Mike leaned back on the couch, his eyes fixed on me in a way that made my skin crawl. "You know," he said, his voice lower, "Tom's a lucky guy." I forced a laugh, brushing the comment aside. "I'm the lucky one," Mike smirked, swirling the amber liquid in his bottle. "If I had a woman like you, I'd never let her out of my sight." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. My pulse quickened as I realized the conversation had veered into dangerous territory. "It's getting late," I said, standing abruptly. "I should clean up and get to bed." As I gathered the empty bottles and headed toward the kitchen, I felt him behind me, too close. When I turned, he was standing there, blocking the doorway. His smile was gone, replaced by an expression I didn't recognize, a mix of desire and something darker. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said, his voice soft but unsteady. "I'm not afraid," I replied, though my shaking hands betrayed me. "But it's time for you to leave." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist. "Don't play dumb, Claire. You felt this between us, haven't you? The way we look at each other when Tom's not around?" My stomach churned. "You need to leave," I said again, my voice firmer this time. But Mike didn't move. His grip tightened, and I could see the conflict in his eyes, desire warring with hesitation. I took a step back, yanking my arm free. The sound of a chair scraping against the floor in the other room startled us both, and for a moment, we froze. Then the front door creaked open. "Claire?" Tom's voice echoed through the house, and I felt a flood of relief, until I realized Mike hadn't let go. What the hell is going on? Tom's silhouette filled the doorway, his face a mask of confusion and anger. Mike released me, stepping back with his hands raised. "It's not what it looks like," he said quickly, the words tumbling out in a rush. I stood frozen, my mind racing. "Tom, save it," Tom snapped, his eyes darting between us. "Why are you even here, Mike?" Before either of us could answer, Mike did something I'll never forget. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tapping the screen a few times before holding it up for Tom to see. "You think I'm the problem here?" Mike spat. "Maybe you should ask her what she's been up to while you're gone." Tom's face darkened as he looked at the screen, his jaw tightening. "What the hell is this?" I stepped closer, my breath catching as I saw the image on Mike's phone. A photo of me in the backyard, smiling up at a man who wasn't Tom. The man's face was obscured, but the implication was clear. "It's not what you think," I said, panic rising in my chest. "Then what is it?" Tom demanded, his voice cold. Mike's smirk returned, and for the first time, I realized he wasn't just drunk. He was calculated. "You've been lying to him, Claire. Don't act so innocent." The room spun as the weight of his accusations settled over me. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but before I could speak, Mike dropped another bombshell. "Tell him who you were with last week," he said, his eyes locked on mine. Or should I? The air left my lungs as Tom turned to me, his expression demanding answers. My mind raced, searching for a way out, but there was none. "Claire," Tom said, his voice breaking. "Is it true?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. March 16th, 2023, 10:15 p.m., Cedar Park, Texas. The room felt unbearably silent, save for the sound of the rain tapping against the windows. Tom's question hung in the air like a loaded gun, and I could see the storm brewing in his eyes as he waited for my response. I wanted to deny it, to tell him that Mike was lying, but the look on Mike's face, the smug certainty, left no room for escape. "Claire," Tom said again, his voice lower this time, the pain unmistakable. "Who were you with last week?" I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. "It's not what you think," I managed, though the words felt hollow even to me. Mike's smirk widened. "That's not an answer." Tom turned to Mike, his anger redirected. "Shut up. I want to hear it from her." My heart raced as I searched for the right words, but Mike wasn't done. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out another phone. A burner, from the looks of it. He tapped the screen a few times before holding it up for both of us to see. The video was grainy but unmistakable. There I was, sitting at an outdoor cafe, laughing with a man I'd hoped never to see again. Ryan, my ex-boyfriend. He leaned in close, his hand brushing mine across the table. Tom's face turned ashen. "Ryan? You've been seeing him?" "No," I blurted, my voice shaking. "It's not like that. I ran into him by chance." "By chance?" Mike cut in, laughing bitterly. "That's rich. You know, Tom, she looked pretty comfortable for someone who just happened to run into her ex." Tom clenched his fists, his body vibrating with barely contained fury. "Why, Claire? Why would you even talk to him?" "It wasn't planned," I insisted. "I hadn't seen him in years. He started talking about old times, and it was harmless." "I didn't," Mike interrupted again, his voice dripping with venom. "Harmless? Come on, Claire. Tell him the whole truth. Or should I?" "Shut up," I snapped, rounding on Mike. "You don't know anything about my life, so stop acting like you do." "Oh, I know plenty," he shot back, his eyes narrowing. "Like how Ryan didn't just happen to show up at that cafe. He's been back in town for months. And you've seen him more than once, haven't you?" Tom's head snapped toward me, his gaze sharp enough to cut glass. "Is that true?" I opened my mouth to deny it, but the weight of the truth crushed me. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "He reached out to me. I thought I could handle it, but you couldn't," Tom finished, his voice hollow. I nodded, ashamed. "Nothing happened, Tom. I swear. It was just talking." "Talking," Mike repeated with a derisive snort. "Sure. Let's go with that." Tom turned to Mike, his voice like ice. "Why are you doing this? What do you get out of destroying my marriage?" Mike's smirk faltered for the first time, replaced by something darker. "Destroying your marriage?" he echoed. "You think I'm the problem here? Maybe if you'd been paying attention, you would have noticed what was going on right under your nose." "You're out of line," Tom growled, stepping closer to him. "And you're blind," Mike shot back. "You don't even see how she looks at other men, how she craves attention. Maybe if you weren't gone all the time." "Don't you dare blame this on me," Tom snarled, shoving Mike backward. Mike stumbled but recovered quickly, his fists clenched at his sides. "Face it, Tom. She's not the perfect wife you think she is. And you're not the perfect husband, either." The tension in the room was unbearable, and I felt like I was watching my life implode in real time. "Stop it," I shouted, my voice breaking. "Both of you, just stop." They ignored me, their argument escalating into a shouting match. Words flew back and forth, each one a dagger aimed at the other's deepest insecurities. I stood there, paralyzed, until Mike said something that froze me to my core. "You're no saint either, Tom," he spat. "How's your little side project going?" Tom's expression shifted from anger to alarm in an instant. Shut your mouth. Mike's grin returned, this time tinged with malice. What's the matter? Afraid she'll find out about your late-night trips to Dallas? Or should I say, your late-night trips to her apartment? My heart stopped. Her? Who's her? Tom didn't answer, his eyes locked on Mike in silent warning. Oh, come on, Mike said, laughing. Don't act like you're so innocent. Tell her about Vanessa. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Vanessa was a coworker Tom had mentioned in passing, a bubbly marketing manager who always seemed to have an excuse to call him after hours. Tom, I said, my voice trembling. Is he telling the truth? He hesitated, and in that moment, I knew. My world crumbled as I stared at him, searching for any sign of the man I thought I knew. How long? I asked, my voice barely audible. Claire, how long? I repeated, louder this time. Tom sighed, running a hand through his hair. A few months, he admitted. But it's over now. I swear. I stumbled back, the weight of his confession crushing me. You lied to me. Both of you lied to me. Mike shrugged, unrepentant. Now you see the truth. Neither of you is as perfect as you pretend to be. The sound of my own heartbeat drowned out everything else as I realized the full extent of the betrayal surrounding me. I thought I knew these men. I thought I knew myself. But in the span of a single night, everything I believed had been torn to shreds. And I wasn't sure if it could ever be put back together. March 17th, 2023, 12:35 a.m., Cedar Park, Texas. I stood in the middle of the living room, drenched in silence, my mind a whirlwind of betrayal and disbelief. Tom sat on the edge of the couch, his face buried in his hands, while Mike leaned casually against the wall, his smug grin a reminder of just how much he had orchestrated this disaster. I thought I'd seen it all that night, but I was wrong. You're proud of this, aren't you? I spat, turning to Mike. Blowing up our lives, hurting everyone just to prove some twisted point. He straightened, his grin fading. You think this is just about proving a point? You don't get it, do you? Oh, I get it, I snapped. You're bitter, jealous, angry that Tom has something you don't. Mike laughed bitterly, shaking his head. This isn't about jealousy. This is about truth. You two play house, pretending everything's perfect, but it's a lie. And maybe it's time you faced it. I crossed my arms, my voice trembling with anger. And what about you, Mike? You've been lurking around our lives for years, pretending to be a friend while secretly hating us. What's your excuse? His jaw tightened, and for the first time that night, I saw a flicker of vulnerability. My excuse, he said quietly. Maybe it's because I've been in love with you for as long as I can remember. The words hit me like a freight train. What? Tom stood abruptly, his face a mask of disbelief. Mike ignored him, his eyes locked on mine. You were the one thing I couldn't have, Claire. The one thing he had that I wanted. And I thought if I waited long enough, maybe. He trailed off, his voice breaking. That's insane, I whispered, taking a step back. Maybe, Mike admitted, but it's the truth. Tom lunged at him, grabbing him by the collar. You stay the hell away from her. Mike shoved him off, his expression hardening. Oh, now you care? After everything you've done? Don't act like you're some knight in shining armor, Tom. You cheated on her. You lied to her. You've been no better than me. Shut up, Tom roared, his fists clenched. But Mike wasn't finished. You don't deserve her, and you know it. That's why you're so scared, because deep down, you know I'd treat her better than you ever could. That's enough. I screamed, my voice cutting through the chaos. Both men turned to me, their expressions a mix of anger and shame. This isn't about who deserves who, I said, my voice trembling. This is about the fact that neither of you respects me enough to let me decide what I want. You've both lied to me, manipulated me, used me like a pawn in your stupid little game. And I'm done. The room fell silent. I don't care about your excuses, I continued, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. I'm done with both of you. You can take your lies, your betrayals, and your twisted love and shove it. Tom's face crumpled, and he reached for me. Claire, Please, no. I stepped back, shaking my head. It's too late, Tom. I can't do this anymore. I turned to Mike, my glare icy. And you? You don't love me, Mike. You love the idea of me. But you don't destroy someone's life if you truly care about them. For the first time that night, Mike looked ashamed. I grabbed my coat and keys, heading for the door. Where are you going? Tom asked, his voice desperate. Anywhere but here, I replied, my tone final. I drove aimlessly for hours, the rain pounding against the windshield as I tried to make sense of everything. By the time dawn broke, I had made my decision. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and uncomfortable conversations. I filed for divorce, cut all ties with Mike, and focused on rebuilding my life. It wasn't easy. Betrayal leaves scars that don't heal overnight. But for the first time in years, I felt free. As for Tom and Mike, they got what they deserved. The truth about Tom's affair and the money he'd funneled into Vanessa's account came out, costing him his job and his reputation. Mike, desperate to salvage what little pride he had left, moved to another city. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that Thursday and how close I came to losing myself in their lies. But then I remind myself that the night didn't just destroy my life. It set me free. And that, more than anything, changed everything.